Hello and welcome everyone to the Marr Show. Thank you guys for joining me for another fantastic episode. In the last episode, I filmed around my apartment, showcasing my bedroom, the living room, parts around the apartment we haven't really showcased before here on the channel. And you probably noticed in that video we have a lot of Disney stuff, ranging from having the entire Disney animated films on DVD, a lot of the Disney puzzles we have framed around the apartment. We just love Disney. Me and my family are Disney fanatics, mostly in the animation side of things, but I still love the live action films like 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, the pirate films, and all that good stuff. I'm not gonna say the company is flawless. I mean, there are some things that I will admit that is wrong with the current company, like them currently running a monopoly after buying 20th Century Fox. The fact that they don't do anything with the Muppets. Do something with the Muppets. I need more Muppet goodness. You got Star Wars and Marvel plastered all over the place. We need more Muppet goodness. Please? But aside from Disney not doing anything with the Muppets, we're not going to talk about the whole company as a whole, as instead I want to talk about a certain aspect about Walt Disney himself. There's a lot to say about the man. He's incredible. He practically changed the world in both an entertainment for film, cinema, theme park, and just bringing little happiness to the world. He's just incredible. And there's a lot to say about Walt Disney, too much stuff, and I think I'm not qualified to really talk about the man. But there is one aspect about Disney that not a whole lot of people really discuss, and that's, well, he's a futurist. Walt was always excited for what the next day had to bring, always wanted to keep moving forward and going the extra mile to see what tomorrow has to bring, while still remembering the mistakes and the revelations we made in the past, but not dwelling on the past, and always looking forward to what tomorrow has to bring, how we can improve film cinema, entertainment as a whole, and I was looking forward to that great big beautiful tomorrow. And the reason why I'm mentioning Walt as a futurist is mostly due to the fact I have been obsessed with this one concept that Walt has had before his passing. It's a concept I absolutely love and is just mind-blowing as a whole. And I just want to make a video discussing this ideal. I mean, yes, there are countless videos that have already discussed this, but I just want to share my love. For today, we're going to talk about the original Epcot. And before I can get into that, we have to flash forward to this short presentation that Walt made shortly before his passing. In this short presentation, Walt discussed plans for his planned Disney World or the original Florida project, and it is quite different from what we would know now as the Walt Disney World Resort. The Magic Kingdom was still there as a theme park, along surrounded with different recreational activities and hotels for guests, but there was a lot of other stuff within this original Florida project. An airport of the future, an entrance complex where visitors will enter and leave, an industrial park, all that will be connected by a high-speed transport system all around this resort. But by far the heart and soul, the most exciting part of all of the original Florida project was the original Epcot. When someone mentions Epcot, most people will remember the theme park or Epcot Center. And I will admit, as a kid, I didn't care much for Epcot. I mean, as a kid, I was more obsessed with the Animal Kingdom side of things than it was with Epcot. Heck, I didn't even know what Epcot really was, aside from having that golf ball in the middle of the park. But after watching so much theme park videos that I could count, I have to say I have a greater appreciation for Epcot, or the previous Epcot. I mean, the Epcot now is very controversial with the changes going on, but for what Epcot stood for, I really found fascinating. A World's Fair of sorts, showcasing technology and igniting ideas of creativity of how to improve the next day. I always loved Future World, and heck, World Showcase I think is a brilliant celebration of all cultures all around the world. And I always just love the idea of this theme park dedicated to not just the future side of things, showcasing creativity and technology of the future, but also a showcase of all the cultures around the world and such. So I have a much more higher respect for Epcot than I did back as a kid. Although one thing that always confused me was the name Epcot. For the longest time, I had no idea what it stood for. That was until I watched the original presentation, and I have to admit, it's fascinating. And for those who don't know what Epcot stands for, it stands for Experimental Prototype Community of Tomorrow. Also, I just want to say that is so fun to say. Experimental Prototype Community of Tomorrow. That's just fun to say. And as the name implies, that's what Epcot was originally meant to be. A city where people can live, work, and play. And all that will live there will be employed at the Disney World Resort. But aside from it being a city where people can live, what makes Epcot especially fascinating is that Epcot will be an endless blueprint. A city that will always be in a state of becoming, showcasing, testing, and demonstrating all the new ideals and materials of the American industry. A showcase to the world of city planning and living. And here I thought people thought Walt was insane for making his own theme park. There's so much to really say about Epcot that, and to be fair, there's a lot more better videos that discuss the details of Epcot a little bit more, but I'm gonna run down some of the basics of Epcot. The city will be shaped like a wheel of some sort in organization, where people movers and transportations will circle around the city for ease. The center of the city will be a 50 or so story cosmopolitan hotel and convention center. Surrounding the hotel will be shops and restaurants that will reflect the cultures and locations from around the globe. And around the shopping center will be apartment housing. And around that will be the greenbelt and low-density resident areas, such as parks, churches, and single-family homes. And speaking of housing, all the houses around Epcot as well as the apartments can be easily changed as technology increases. So like for example, there was like a new refrigerator or a new type of television or air conditioning unit. The houses can be easily switched around to put in that new air conditioning unit or refrigerator for testing or demonstrating. 20,000 people will be living in Epcot, and all the citizens there will be employed at the Walt Disney World, as well as having the same responsibility to keep Epcot clean and maintained. The main line of transportation for Epcot will be by people movers and monorails, but as for trucks and passenger vehicles, they will be in separate layers out of pedestrian areas. And that's just the rough draft about Epcot. There's a lot more details, and there's a lot more people or videos that do a lot more better explanations about Epcot, about what it was going to be, but I just find this concept so fascinating. A city that is always continuously changing. With technology growth, the city will change around it, as well as just a blueprint of potential ideas for city planning. It's incredible. But there's one question that I think some people will be asking: why would Walt do something like that? I mean, yes, people thought he was insane for making his own theme park, but making a city that is constantly changing, why would Walt want to do that? When seeing his grandchildren grow up, Walt began to worry about the future of the world they will live in. He noticed many modern cities that were disorganized, cluttered up, polluted, and just, well, not to be harsh on all these cities, but crap. Realizing what he and his Imagineers had learned from making Disneyland, he began to study more about city planning and potentially build a city that will hopefully be an example to many on how to maintain and properly organize a city. I'm gonna be honest here, the future kind of scares me a bit. Not just for what's gonna happen to me, but just the state of the world, where technology is mostly gonna be invented to make us even more lazier. Like, for example, there was this one time when me and my brother was driving, I saw this black circle saying moving across a yard, and that's literally like a Roombot type saying that is to mow people's yards. I can see like if it's an older person who has a very small yard and can't really use a push mower, I can understand, but this was like a huge yard that I saw that was like on a hill, and that's just, I don't know, that just feels lazy to me. But then again, I personally like mowing yards, so that's just my personal sake. Or people just doing absolutely asinine things. Like, I saw this one article of this one guy making an AI robot with the mindset of a serial killer. That's just stupid. And when people think of the state in the world that we will live in, a lot of people just see just disorganized crime, just a lot of bad stuff of disorganizing cities or life in an apocalyptic type, or sort of like in the state of Ready Player One, where everything is just built on top of trailer stacks and all that. But this, I think, is different. Walt just wanted to make the world brighter. That's always been his vision, always wanted to make the world a little bit better place. I mean, sure, it's crazy to imagine the city that is always constantly changing along with technology. It's a very insane idea, but for Walt, wanting to help the world in a way to not only showcase new technologies and demonstrate them, but also wanting to ignite innovation to cities around the world to how to properly maintain a city and to help make urban living more accessible and pleasing for people, I think is very heartwarming. It's something I really find fascinating about the original Epcot, and I just love it. And Walt was very excited about this idea. When he was in the hospital during his last few days, he used the hospital ceiling to imagine his city and plan more. And according to Imagineer Bob Gurr, Walt even pointed out to one of the benches on the scale model, declaring this is the spot where him and his wife Lily will sit at when all of Epcot is said and done. But as I mentioned, this featurette was filmed 2 months before Walt's passing, and after Walt passed away, most of the Florida project was scrapped. While the Magic Kingdom and a few hotels would be opened in Florida in 1971, Epcot was deemed too risky to build, seeing as the man who was the main source of inspiration for Epcot was no longer with us. However, that doesn't mean some ideas from Epcot wasn't used in the Magic Kingdom. Some practical ideas from Epcot did inspire the resort in a way, such as waste disposal, transportation systems by taking guests around the resort, an underground system for cast members. There was a few ideas that helped innovate some ways to make Magic Kingdom more accessible for both cast members and guests. And then in the late 70s, the CEO of the time, called Walker, wanted to revisit that concept, but was scaled down much more for the original ideal of what Epcot would have been, and thus it was changed into the Epcot Center we know today. And so that's kind of like a little rough summary of the original Epcot. I mean, yes, there's a lot more better videos that discuss the ideal in better detail, but I just want to talk about it just as I love this ideal. But a lot of people like to ask this question discussing about the original Epcot. If it would have been built, the original Epcot, if it would have been built in like during the 70s, if Walt was still alive, would it work now in today's standards? That's really hard to really talk about and really to picture, as we'll never know. As Walt mentioned in the featurette, Epcot from the standpoint of where Epcot was at the time would be changing so much. Heck, it probably would have been drastically different if they continued building and constructed the original Epcot. It would have been probably different, as we know Epcot from back then was in the blueprint stages. And there's a few things about the original Epcot that is questionable. Like, for example, as I mentioned, everyone living at Epcot will be working, so does that mean if someone was to retire, do they have to leave Epcot, pack up and move away, even if they want to stay and just retire there? But I think the big problem that Epcot would have suffered is the world that we live in. Technology is constantly going, always innovating. Heck, it seems like every week or two there's something new for like a new type of television that's out. Or heck, for PC users, a new graphics card that just came out that you have to update. Technology is constantly growing. In fact, that's a problem with Tomorrowland and Epcot as a whole. Since tomorrow is always coming, it's gonna make it feel outdated and such. And sure, as I mentioned, housing is easy to access to change around new stuff, but if they were to release a new refrigerator or new television every single week, does that mean the house has to automatically build up to the new technologies? It really makes you think of how much reorganizing and changes that Epcot, or the original Epcot, would have had to gone through if this ideal would have stayed. Also, I just want to point out that one of the original ideas for Epcot was to surround itself in this glass globe for weather control, for temperature measuring and such. The only thing I can think about when I see is just Billy Joel standing there with a brick, like in the cover from Glass House, just about to throw a brick at it. I know that's mean, but I just think that's just funny. Then again, I love Billy Joel. And believe it or not, the Walt Disney Company has made a city In the early 90s, the Walt Disney Company built a community on the Florida property called Celebration. It's sort of like Epcot, but it's significantly scaled down. Unlike the original Epcot, which is based more on the future side of things, it's more based on urban living and resembles a small American town that has all the modern conveniences. Unfortunately, I heard that living there is very strict, mostly in the neighborhood guidelines. It's very strict in that kind of way, but it's kind of cool that the Walt Disney Company did build a community, even though it's much scaled down compared to what Epcot would have been. And so yeah, that's just a little video of me geeking out over the original Epcot. There's a lot to really talk about, and there's so many different videos and a lot of sites as well that is dedicated to discussing more about Epcot and what it could have been as such. And overall, I just think the ideal of Epcot, or the original ideal, is fantastic. And if this was to take place, if they actually would have built the original Epcot, it would have been Walt's biggest dream come true. And I think it's important to remember what Epcot could have been. I mean, yeah, I still love the park, even though nowadays it's kind of turning into a Magic Kingdom too, but we're not gonna discuss about that. That's for another video, another time in the future. But for me, when I look at Epcot now, I just love the original Epcot. I just do. Just go look at more about it, or just watch the original presentation film that Walt made before his passing about it. It's very interesting to look at. And that's all the time we have for today, folks. So if you would like to leave your thoughts on today's video, just comment below. You don't know what you guys think of the original Epcot idea of what it could have been, as well as mention what you think about the Epcot Center Park now. I haven't been to Walt Disney World in a long time, like since I was maybe 7 or 6, I can't remember. But me and my family definitely do want to go back there. Maybe in 2019 or 2020 or whenever, we definitely want to go back and visit the park. It's just, yeah, the original Epcot, I just think it's a fantastic idea, but you know what you guys think of the ideal. Thank you guys for watching this, God bless yous, and I will see you all in the next Marr Show episode. Bye bye!